season, Buffy died. Or did she?
Previously on the Bangers and Mash show, we devoted an entire episode to the first 4 seasons of that beloved cult television series, Florence the Werewolf Destroyer.
Who?
Florence the Werewolf Destroyer.
You've done some terrible things, Florence.
Is that not the name of the show?
No.
Oh, what's it called?
You know, Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Buffy the Vampire Slayer? Did she roleplay as a vampire? Is she a LARPer?
She's like a playa.
Oh, it's a playa, not a player.
Yeah.
So anyway, this is part 2 of our Buffy retrospective. We're gonna talk about the divisive second half of the series. The reason I split our conversation in half at that point is the quality of the show becomes more uneven from this point on, which is something you and I debate.
Yeah.
You and I disagree about a lot of things that are going to be happening. So let's jump right in it. What's our first topic of discussion here? Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Season
5.
5.
She was chosen to protect the living. For years she has survived the wrath of her enemies. Now, one force will send her world crashing.
Can we go now?
The sister, Buffy's convinced she's always had. Buffy will find out her memories may not be real. Something from a world beyond has come to Sunnydale, but it isn't Buffy she's come for.
They sent the key to her in the form of a sister.
Dawn will uncover the truth.
She's a god and she's coming for us.
The greatest test of the Slayer's courage is before her.
Really need to start with the Season 5 discussion with the first episode, which is
Buffy versus Dracula.
which is going to happen inevitably. She has to fight the king of all vampires.
Yeah.
It's a really fun episode.
Probably one of my top 10 favorite episodes.
What's so fun about Buffy versus Dracula is it really slots the Buffy characters into the traditional roles in the Dracula story. Xander becomes the Renfield. Hilarious scene where he shoves Anya in a closet. Buffy becomes the Mina character. Dracula attempts to seduce her. I love the scene where they're in Dracula's castle and Giles falls into a pit.
A love pit of vampires.
Yeah, with the brides. Riley tries to get him out of the pit, and Giles is like, oh, I dropped something. And what do we think of this particular alliteration of Dracula? How does Dracula fit into the Buffyverse?
I like this iteration of Dracula. He looks like a goth kid from high school, is what he looks like.
Dracula first goes up to Buffy in the graveyard, and he says, I'm Dracula. And Buffy's like, really? Because I fought a couple of pasty kids who called themselves Lestat. Nobody takes it seriously at first. I believe Xander says, 1, 2, 3 victims. Dracula literally exists. Spike has met Dracula before, and I believe he owes him some money.
Yeah.
The Buffyverse, Dracula is a regular vampire who has learned some magic, and that's why he can do some things that are special. He can turn into fog, a wolf. He can apparently reassemble himself after he's been dusted.
Yeah.
That episode is a ball. It's a really great season opener. The very last scene in that episode, something happens.
What? What's that be?
Buffy goes upstairs to get something out of her room.
Oh, yeah, that.
And Joy says, if you're going out, why don't you take your sister with you?
And everyone that's never seen this episode before goes,
What? Buffy has a little sister? What? And that sets up the arc of the entire season, which is
Glorificus.
There's a new big bad in town. Exiled god called Glory is looking to open a doorway back to her hell dimension. But in order to do that, she needs a special item.
The key.
Glorificus, or Glory, needs the key to get back to her hell dimension. And the monks designated with protecting the key made the key into a person and sent it to live with Buffy. And that's where Dawn comes from. That's why Buffy suddenly has a little sister that we've never seen before. Memories of her as a child have been engineered into everybody's head. said, what do we think of Dawn?
This season, I hate her. She's abrasive.
I don't know why they decided to write her as an angsty teenager. The episode where she finds out that she's the key. She's not a person, quote unquote. What does she do when she finds out about that?
She cuts herself.
Goes downstairs bleeding and says, am I real? Do I bleed? Or something like that. The scene that really made me chuckle, when she tears down all the boy band posters in her bedroom, it's a little trite, and it's kind of weird because the show did such a good job of writing teenage characters in the first couple seasons. Dawn is kind of abrasive. There are times when I think I like her. The second episode of the season, Real Me, is narrated by Dawn, and there are some really cute, funny moments. Dawn has this precocious crush on Xander.
Yeah.
I feel like Xander looks at me not as a girl, but as a woman, but during the scene, they're eating ice cream, and she has ice cream all over her face.
My favorite part in that episode, she talks about how she likes what Willow likes magic and stuff like that. And she tells her mom that she wants to do what Willow and Tara does.
And then my mom sent me to my room and was really quiet for some reason. It's not really the fault of Trachtenberg, who is a good actress. The series doesn't really know what to do with Dawn sometimes. Something I do like about Season 5. I don't dislike Season 5. Let's just clarify that. It is weaker than the preceding seasons. But an element I do like is Giles gets a job.
Yeah.
One of Glorificus's minions has killed the owner of Sunnydale's local magic shop, the Magic Box, and Giles decides to buy the magic shop. And do you remember the grand opening where I believe Willow walks into the Magic Box and Giles is sitting there dressed as a wizard?
Yeah.
And they don't say anything to each other. They stare at each other for a minute and he just takes the hat off. The Magic Box, at least for this season, becomes the center of the Buffyverse.
Yeah.
Giles trains Buffy in the back. Anya works there. Anya gets some great character development. She becomes a capitalist, a very proud capitalist. Let's talk about Glory. You like Glory.
I do like Glory.
What do you like about Glory?
She's the anti-Buffy.
So she's Cordelia.
Yeah. She's like Cordelia with Slayer powers.
She's actually more powerful than the Slayer.
Well, yeah. She's this really attractive valley girl who can throw down with Buffy. That's what I like most about her. She's the first big bad that can go fisticuffs with Buffy.
It's actually one of my big problems with the character. The show has had to escalate the danger level for each new big bad. Each one has to be more dangerous than the preceding one. It's reached the point where Buffy's adversary is a literal god. I have the same problem with Glory that I have with Doomsday and Bane in the DC comics. Making a villain who's stronger and tougher than the hero is not really compelling to me. Glory's personality, she's narcissistic, materialistic. It's stuff the show's done before and done better. It's not really the fault of the actress who's fine. And the show even does some interesting things with Glory as a character. What about Ben?
That's the other aspect of her that I like. She's not full-blown big bad 24/7.
Part of her condition of being exiled from the Hell Dimension, she sometimes changes forms into a mortal man who is Ben, who's a doctor. Almost a love interest for Buffy.
Yeah.
And that element is better, though. It does become tiresome. It takes the main characters a while to figure out that Ben is Glory. When she transforms, anybody who sees this forgets it. When the audience has figured something out before the cast figured it out, that's always a problem. Season 5 not only has some prominent characters being introduced, it has some prominent characters exiting the show. Some things happen to Buffy's mom.
Yeah, she gets a bad case of brain tumors.
This is an arc that goes through a couple of episodes where Joyce has mood swings and blurts out very hurtful things. Eventually, they take the brain tumor out, they cure her, but even after that,
she still dies.
She still dies. And
she dies of an aneurysm, I believe.
That leads to what is one of the most
gut-wrenching,
difficult to watch hours of television I've ever seen. Previous episode ends with Buffy coming home from having an adventure. She says, Mom, and she sees Joyce collapse on the couch.
And she says, Mommy?
The next episode is The Body. It's all about Joyce's death. There's no musical score for this episode. It's shot in a very naturalistic way. One of the goals for Whedon when he was directing that episode is to show that life goes on even while a personal tragedy is happening. It really shows how each of the characters grapples with this grief in a different way. Xander has outbursts of anger. Willow starts crying because she can't figure out what to wear to the hospital. It's hard to watch. It is a rough hour of television. And even some of the stuff leading up to that is hard when Joyce is sick. Over the years, Joyce has never been a major character, but for 4 years of television, she's always been really well written. The viewer feels like Joyce is like my mom too. When she exits it, it's rough. And there's another prominent character leaving the show, Riley.
Yeah.
And Riley really becomes a yoke in season 5. His fifis get hurt. There's this whole ridiculous storyline where now that the initiative is gone and he no longer has government support, he feels devalued. He's not as strong as Buffy. What's the thing he starts doing?
Lets vampires feed on him.
It's the first of a couple really awkward drug metaphors on Buffy, where he goes to this den where mortals let vampires feed on them just a little bit and they get some sort of thrill out of this. And it's just so fucking stupid. I do not care. And this is a problem that becomes more prominent from this point when characters have problems and it feels unimportant. Characters are acting in a very selfish, stupid manner, and I really hate that.
It's almost like addicts do selfish
things. Shut up. By the time Riley leaves the show, good riddance.
I never really did care for Riley.
Didn't dislike him initially. The show never quite had a clear idea what to do with Riley. Willow and Tara's romance gets very very serious.
Yeah.
She's officially gay now. We learn a little bit about Tara, about her background.
Yeah.
She comes from a weirdo, pseudo-backwoods redneck family where the belief is that women are literally treated as if they are demons. Problems?
Who's the dad in that?
I don't know. I know the sister's played by Amy Adams.
Yeah.
You said to me, hey, is that Amy Adams as Tara's sister? No, it can't be. And I looked it up, and lo and behold, it is indeed. I like Tara and Willow together in the sense that it's a very nice relationship. They're very cute together. I still have some problems with Tara as a character. Xander and Anya move in together?
That's the Doppelganger episode.
The Replacement, which
where
is
he
a...
splits.
Xander gets shot by some magical beam. He's split into two, and we find out his best qualities and his worst qualities are isolated. That's a hilarious episode. I really like that one, especially when Xander goes up to Willow and does the Snoopy dance. You know, in real life, Nicholas Brindon has a real twin brother.
No, I didn't know that.
And the scenes where the two Xanders are next to each other, that's his brother playing his other half. When the two Xanders start hanging out together, they start to become more like each other, and they both say in unison, kill us both, Spock! Or when Anya says, well, can I take them both back to the house and have sex with each of them? And I like that Xander and Anya's relationship continues to develop, and they become a really sweet couple. An unreciprocated romance begins in season 5.
Is that Spike and Buffy?
Spike realizes that he's in love with Buffy. He's not especially happy about it at first. He's shacking up with Harmony for a while.
Calls her Harm.
She calls him Blondie Bear. He really has no feelings for
She
Harmony.
calls him Spiky Poo a couple of times.
Yeah,
too.
Spiky Poo, yeah, she does. And it's a totally ridiculous relationship. As I said last time, I love pathetic Spike, and once he starts to develop feelings for Buffy, he becomes really pathetic. To the point where later in the season, he has a robot built in her image.
Yeah,
and I guess
Buffybot.
we should talk about the introduction of Warren. Nowadays, we would call him a men's right activist. He's in a relationship with a woman, but previously he built a sex robot for himself, because apparently the technology of robotics is way more advanced in the Buffyverse, because we've already had Ted previously. What do you think of the whole Buffybot scenario?
I like Buffybot.
That episode where Buffy's out in the desert having a vision quest, and the Scoobies mistake the Buffybot for the real deal is a pretty great episode. I have some problems with season 5, but something I do like is how all the seemingly divergent plot elements are brought together in the last episode. Buffybot comes back, Olaf the Troll God's hammer becomes important.
Yeah.
There's a lot of little dangling plot threads that suddenly are tied together. There's this subplot about this order of knights, the Knights of Byzantium.
Yeah.
And I don't think anybody likes those guys. The entire fandom dislikes that plot thread.
Yeah, it's just unnecessary.
They
And
have to-
almost kill Giles, and you can't kill Giles.
They do kill Giles off in the comic.
Fuck the comics. It's the worst season of Buffy ever.
I'm inclined to agree about that. That's later. The Scoobies pile into a RV, and there's a chase scene with the Knights. Another moment where Buffy kills normal humans. But eventually it leads, Glory does capture Dawn, and this leads to our season finale, where another prominent character exits the show, temporarily.
Buffy.
They need Dawn's blood to open this gate, and they actually succeed in doing that. And it causes all this crazy shit to happen. A portal opens in a building, and all these demons that look like xenomorphs come out.
Yeah.
The only thing that can close the portal is blood from that family line. What does Buffy do to close the portal?
Throws herself into it.
Yeah, and it should be mentioned that this was the final season on the WB network. And do you believe that this was intended as a possible ending?
I do believe that. I do believe that this was meant to be an ending.
I don't!
Why?
They set up all of these new storylines. Xander proposes to Anya, and Spike is now in love with Buffy. Giles, throughout the season, is debating leaving Sunnydale, which is a plotline I hate, by the way, and it becomes much worse next season. Clearly, Giles is needed. This belief that he's holding Buffy back somehow is so stupid. I do believe the plan all along was to kill off Buffy so that it could eventually bring her back. I also think this was contingency. If they didn't get picked up by another network, it would work as an ending. And though I have some qualms with the season overall, that last episode is pretty good.
Yeah.
What's that very last image? We see a slow zoom in on Buffy's tombstone, which says,
Buffy Ann Summers.
beloved sister,
She saves the world.
a lot.
Well, we didn't talk about my favorite episode.
What's your favorite episode from season
My
5?
favorite episode from season 5 is the one where Glory brain rapes Tara,
To make herself feel better, she sucks the sanity out of people.
and then Willow gets pissed, goes all Dark Phoenix on.
She totally Dark Phoenixes out. This is some foreshadowing for stuff that would happen next season.
Well, yeah, we're not getting into that yet.
Her eyes get black, her hair gets longer, and she performs some serious magic. I want to talk about a couple stray episodes here that I really like.
I like the snake episode.
Don't remember which episode that is. Buffy fights Snake Monster. Listening to Fear, maybe the scariest episode of the series. A demon comes from outer space. It lands in a asteroid. Slug demon that sneaks up on people while they're in bed, vomits digestive fluid on them, and then eats them. Some very moody direction in that episode. I feel like that's one of the spookiest episodes. The Queller Demon is the name of that monster. Triangles, we mentioned Olaf the Troll God. A hilarious episode. I believe Willow and Dawn accidentally summon this troll who goes on a rampage through town, and it throws Willow and Anya together as a team. Anya resents Willow a little bit because she knows that her and Xander previously had feelings for each other. Olaf is a really funny character because he says things like, "Bring me grog so I can make merry with your more attractive daughters," or "Bring me a succulent, tasty baby, I hunger." Earlier in the scene, Spike was talking about how they have this fried onion thing. And that comes up a couple of times, and I just love that.
Well, that comes up a couple of times in the whole series.
Yeah, Spike has a real affinity for bloomin' onions or awesome blossoms, whatever you want to call them. Overall, season 5, it's got some strong moments. It's got some stuff I'm not too crazy about. But it's not a bad season. It may be the last good season, depending on your opinions on what's coming next.
Buffy lives. Being a Slayer is a full-time job, but it doesn't pay the bills.
So you're telling me I'm broke?
But evil never rests.
Last night, did anybody, burst into song?
New beginnings.
We kissed.
What we did is done.
Bitter endings.
I don't want to leave.
So don't.
Making love can be a real struggle. A dark power is seducing Willow. Buffy's cooked up a new way to make money. But down at the Double Meat Palace, the people are dropping like fries.
This is going to be one hell of a wedding. A secret reveal. Lives can change in an instant. When vengeance calls, will death have the last word? Hell have no fury like a Wiccan scorned.
So obviously Buffy doesn't stay dead, or else there wouldn't be a show.
Right.
The series got picked up by UPN, ran for 2 more years. Opinion on the UPN years is divided, especially on this show. Because you like season 6, I, meanwhile, dislike it immensely. It is my least favorite season of the entire series. There are some very strong episodes in season 6. Last season, they upped the physical threat of the villain as high as they possibly could, and perhaps they realized they couldn't go any further than that. So this year, they go in the opposite direction. Buffy brought back to life by her friends, and her villain is reality, because her life just blows. They bring Buffy back. How do they go about doing that?
Willow does some weird shit in the graveyard. Next thing we know, Buffy's back.
Kills an adorable little baby fawn. There's a sequence where she's in a fiery circle vomiting up snakes and shit.
Which is cool.
Originally, it aired as a 90-minute movie called Bargaining. They've been using the Buffy bot and their patrols so that the demonic community believes that the Slayer is still alive. As soon as a local group of demons find out that Buffy is dead, they invade Sunnydale and run amok. Biker demons, which are kind of cool. Buffy is not happy to be brought back to life. Why is that?
She was in heaven.
3rd episode of the season, she confidentially tells Spike and nobody else. Willow and friends believe that Buffy was in hell. And when Buffy comes back to life, she acts very feral and strange. The truth is, she was at peace. She's in a bad mood throughout the entire season.
Yeah.
And it's one of the reasons why I dislike this season. Buffy is miserable.
That's one of the reasons why I like the season.
I don't like Buffy when she's
okay,
miserable.
well, you die, and I put on some serious mojo because I think you're in hell, and the podcast has to continue. So I put on some serious mojo, and I pull you out of what I believe to be a hell dimension. As soon as you get out of the graveyard, you instantly have to go back to fighting demons. You tell me how long it's going to take you to get into a good mood.
I would probably be a little grouchy.
You're a little grouchy if you have to get up before noon.
I understand why Buffy's miserable, I just don't like it. What are some of the things Buffy starts doing because she is so distraught?
She cries a lot. She fucks Spike.
Yeah, she starts boinking. Spike discovers he can hurt Buffy. And ever since she came back to life,
She came back wrong.
he can beat her up and not get this pain. They start beating the crap out of each other in this abandoned house, and then they start fucking. My problem with the Buffy-Spike story arc, Buffy treats Spike terribly. And I get that he's a vampire and he's quote-unquote evil, and he's done a lot of terrible things, but he is doing his best for her. He takes care of Dawn a couple of times.
For the record, she's really only in a really shitty mood until the end of the musical episode.
No. It goes on. She collapses and cries on Tara. She tells Tara that she's fucking Spike and she feels really bad about it. There's no good reason for Buffy to feel awful about a relationship that seems to be working out for her. I mean, she's getting laid a lot. It leads to a really grotesquely dumb moment. Buffy hurts herself by fighting a demon in a graveyard, and Spike tries to force himself on her. Dumb moment.
But I don't like it.
It seems grossly out of character for everybody involved. The show brushes it off in a weird way, too. The real reason they did this is they wanted Spike out of town for the 3-part season finale. Aside from reality itself, who is the big bad for season 6?
The trio.
A bunch of fucking nerds who decide they're going to become Buffy's arch nemesis.
Yeah, but they were playing Go Fish. Then Warren was like, you guys want to team up and take over Sunnydale?
Yeah, you want to become supervillains?
Okay. That is exactly how that went down.
2 of these characters are characters we've met before. Jonathan has been an on and off presence on the show. He's definitely a nerd, and he's definitely pathetic, and he's definitely used magic to try to get his way before. But actually doing things that are outright evil seems about a character for Jonathan. The first one to feel bad about what happens. Warren becoming a villain makes perfect sense, because we already know that he's a scumbag. He gets much, much worse before the season is over. Later in the season, he tries to brainwash his ex-girlfriend into being a sex slave, and then ends up killing her afterward. An all-around horrendous human being. There's a third member of the trio.
He's been in a previous episode.
No, Andrew's brother was in a previous episode.
No, there was the Flying Monkey episode.
We never actually saw that episode, though. We never actually see this happen.
I'm on to you. you, Whedon.
His brother, who was named
Tucker.
Tucker, previously sicked some demon dogs on the school prom in season 3, which is a great episode. The most pathetic of the trio and kind of ambiguously gay.
He's more than ambiguously gay.
He has some serious man feelings for Warren. And the whole point is, yes, they're pathetic.
Zach, magic is the Buffyverse analogy for lesbianism.
Except when it becomes the Buffyverse analogy for drug addiction.
Except for that.
Some things happen to Willow this season that I am opposed to.
And I like.
I'm against it.
I'm for it. She becomes addicted to magic.
Which is stupid.
No, it's not.
Nothing previously seen in the series has magic working that way. Up until this point, magic is a tool, and you can't become addicted to your socket wrench. I don't understand why suddenly magic is a narcotic. The show doubles down on it in a very ham-fisted, obvious way. You can agree with me, obvious, right?
No.
She's using magic for things that can be done normally. And then later, she starts fucking with Tara's brain.
But if I had access to the vast power that Willow has, I would totally closing the blinds with a wave of a hand.
Of course we would abuse it. The thing that really upsets Tara, Willow uses magic to make her forget. They have a fight, and instead of being a grown-up and dealing with it like a mature person would, Willow has Tara forget it. And she does this a couple of times. It backfires in a pretty big way in one of my favorite episodes of the season. Tara says to Willow, I think we need some time apart. What happens then?
Willow goes off the deep end.
She starts abusing magic even more. To me, that seems out of character for Willow. If somebody said to Willow, you have a problem, the season 3 version of Willow would try to work it out. She wouldn't wallow.
In season 4, she hasn't discovered all the power that she has. And then in season 5, you start seeing a little bit more of Willow saying, I have a spell for that. At the beginning of season 6, she brings someone back to life. If I brought someone back to life with only my power, I would have such a god complex, it would not even be funny. Because I know the argument you're going to make here in a few minutes is the scary, veiny Willow.
I have words about scary.
It hasn't earned it. I say that it does.
Okay, Willow de-rats Amy. Amy's been a rat since season 3. And the first thing they do is they go out to the bronze and they start making people float and putting guys in dresses. It's completely ridiculous. And it gets even stupider after that. This back alley magic dealer. It's this weirdo who lives in a magical portal. Willow and Tara are separated. Willow says she's going to take Dawn out to the movies because Dawn takes Willow and Tara breaking up very hard. Then they stop by this magic drug dealer. Willow spends an hour floating on the ceiling having visions, and it leads to this fucktarded sequence. Can I say fucktarded? Is that PC? Monstrously awful moment. Willow is magically driving a car with Dawn in it and crashes it and almost gets Dawn killed, and it's so fucking stupid!
It is not stupid. There had to be a redemption arc, something drastic that happened.
Willow
loses Tara, Dawn, and Buffy.
But would Willow do that? Would Willow...
If she's coked out on magic, she probably would.
But she wouldn't be coked out... Anyway, let's talk about some other things that make me angry about season 6. Dawn gets a stupid story arc this season where
Dawn gets a stupid story arc every season.
She starts shoplifting.
Teenagers do that.
Teenagers do it, but they turn it into this big melodramatic storyline. It has no place in the story. It climaxes in what we would call a bottle episode. I think it's Buffy's birthday party. An enchantment falls underneath the house. They can't leave the house. Buffy confronts Dawn about her shoplifting in the middle of the scenario. And Dawn makes it all about her. All this crazy shit's happening, and she makes it all about her. And I want to come for the TV screen and smack Michelle Trachtenberg in the face. What stupid shit that happens with Xander and Anya?
Xander breaks up with Anya.
In the worst way possible. Throughout the season, there have been small foreshadowing towards Xander having anxieties about getting married. That's normal.
Speaking from experience, buddy?
Yes, shut up. On the day of their wedding, weirdo old guy comes up to Xander and says, I'm you from the future, and shows him a vision of the future, of the horrible married life that Anya and Xander will have. This causes him to not only end the relationship, not only call off the wedding, but leave Anya at the altar. That episode, it's called Hell's Bells, would have been okay if it ended with Xander going ahead with the wedding anyway, which is what he would have done. This is the guy who runs into danger when his friends are in trouble, even though he's easily the most killable member of the cast. And then it leads to the stupid schism between Xander and Anya for the rest of the series. Ugh, I got problems with it, yo, and I think you actually agree with me on this one.
I do.
It's another example of how everybody's so miserable in this season.
I mean...
By the way, Giles leaves midway through the season, which I hate. Warren becomes more and more blatantly evil.
I like the freeze ray.
Yeah, there is a freeze ray. Warren buys a gun, because in the Buffyverse, guns are the most evil thing ever. If a person's using a gun, they're a coward and a psychopath, usually. He shoots Buffy, and then he fires off some stray bullets, which fly through the window and shoot Tara. Tara dies. Willow immediately tries to bring Tara back to life, but Osiris, god of the dead, says that this was a human death, that I can't do anything about this. So what happens then?
Willow gets all scary veiny and goes dark Phoenix.
She loses her shit. Willow and Tara do work it out. Willow kicks her magic addiction, and her and Tara get back together, and is super happy, and they fuck all night, and they wake up in each other's arms. They add Amber Benson, the actress, to the the opening credits on the episode they kill her off, which is a sick joke.
I never noticed that.
Willow snapping, going into the magic box, absorbing a bunch of Eldritch Texas, getting all gothy with her hair. That's one thing. Some of the things that Willow does once she's quote-unquote Dark Willow is what I hate.
Okay, but once she absorbs all that power, the power itself starts manipulating her.
The second half of that two-parter, which I believe is called Two to Go, some of the things Willow ends up doing, she magically steers a truck to try and run down Buffy and Xander, attempting to murder her best friends.
She is attempting to murder Jonathan and Andrew.
Right.
Buffy and Xander are trying to save them.
We should mention that as soon as she goes Dark Phoenix, she tracks down Warren, she tortures him,
And then flays him.
flays him alive. You can tell they changed networks because season 6 is much more permissive in sex and violence. There's way more boning, there's way more partial nudity, and there's way more blood in the season than any previous one.
Yeah.
Willow is murdering people, she's trying to hurt her friends. By the time she gets to the magic box, she's saying these very hateful things to Dawn. It's not a thing the character would ever do.
You don't know that the character would never do that.
Oh, I know.
Let's dose you up with 5,000 years of Eldritch magic and see what you do. If you start creating puppies and bunnies and have rainbows flying out your ass, then I'll say you're right. But until that happens, you're wrong.
Giles comes back, he's been imbued with some magic by the Watchers Council. There's a okay fight scene between the two of them. Willow ends up draining Giles' magic, and what does she decide to do then?
Destroy the world.
She's gonna destroy the world, what the fuck?
That is the only thing about the whole Dark Willow thing that I don't like. That is taking it a step too far.
They have to turn a personal threat into a global threat because it's the season finale. She raises some demonic church that got buried, and is gonna use this to bring about the end of the world. The one thing that almost saves this wretched, stupid plot line. Who ends up saving the world? Who ends up talking Willow down from her apocalyptic high?
Xander. I love Yellow Crayon Breaky Willow.
I love Breaky Yellow Crayon Willow. I love Dark Veiny Willow. I love Willow. Willow even says you're going to stop me by telling me you love me, which is exactly what he does and it works. The problem with season 6 is Whedon said the arc for the season is reality's the bad guy. Everybody's going to be having a really bad time. But instead of having the characters work with that premise, he forced the characters to work with that premise. And he had them do things that I believe are out of character. I've made my case.
Which is wrong.
And before we move on to season 7, let's talk about some notable episodes from season 6. One in particular.
The musical episode?
The musical episode, which as I previously mentioned, is the episode that brought me into Buffy. Great fucking episode. Right in the middle of a season that I think is overall kind of shitty is this fantastic episode. Once More with Feeling.
I love it. The opening is different.
It's got an overture and then it ends with the end and curtains closing. We talked about it a little bit when we did our horror musical episode 13, way back. Mm-hmm. It should have been terrible. The truth is, a lot of these people are really talented singers. Anthony Stewart Head's already sang a couple of times in season 4. He has this really great, deep timbre. His song, Standing, which is all about how he feels like he's holding Buffy back. A plotline I hate, but the song is fantastic. Amber Benton has this very pretty voice.
Yeah.
And she sings a nice song, I'm Under Your Spell, which has a double meaning, you guys. She's under Willow's spell because they're in love, but also she's literally under a spell by Willow. What do you think of Sarah Michelle Gellar's singing voice? It's not bad. It's a little limited. I kind of wish they hadn't given her so many big songs. I like her songs.
I know Willow's not the best singer.
There's even a line in one of the songs about how I think this line's mostly filler.
I think it would have been funny if they would have had her sing anyway.
Nicholas Brendan and Emma Caulfield have a number called I'll Never Tell. In Anya's words, it'll never be a breakaway pop hit. That whole sequence is pretty adorable. What about James Marster, Spike? He has a rock number, which is really cool. It's a good
Yeah, he again has very limited range.
Most of them are not singers, they're actors, but it just so happens that some of them have pretty decent voices. We should mention the villain of Once More Feeling.
I like him. He's probably one of my favorite villains.
They don't actually name him in the show, but his name is Sweet, and he's a red demon in a zoot suit who tap dances.
Yeah.
And he has a couple of good numbers. The only thing I dislike about Once More Feeling, which is a great episode, at the end when we find out who is responsible for all of this, in TV Troops parlance we would refer to it as an asshole. Who actually summoned the singing, dancing demon?
Xander.
Yeah, because he thought everything would be happy. A couple people actually died. They said, hey, let's do a musical episode, and it was really cool and a lot of fun, and they needed some plot reason for why it happened. Like the funny episodes in season 6. Life Serial, the trio, I should say. They're each trying to do something to mess with Buffy.
Yeah, that's a good episode.
Warren puts a chip on her that makes her out of sync with time. Basically, Buffy's trying to work some odd jobs. She's working briefly at Xander's construction site and kills some demons. And then the best part is she's stuck in a time loop in the magic box. She has to get this woman a mummy hand.
Yeah.
And there's some funny stuff there. We should mention Buffy's employment scenario. Where does she end up working?
What is the name of that place?
The fast food restaurant.
Yeah.
The Double Meat Palace.
Yeah, that's it.
They're sandwiches have chicken and beef on it, which does not sound appetizing. She's got a chicken hat on, cleaning out grease traps. She's boinking Spike in the alley behind the restaurant. A lot of people hate that.
You want to know one thing that was so blatant that I hate?
What's that?
In the episode where Spike and Buffy finally consummate the house is breaking down around them.
Oh, is that a metaphor, JD?
Yeah, it's such a blatant metaphor that it pisses me off. So blatant it's almost like they're making fun of us.
Another funny episode is Tabula Rasa, where everybody loses their memory. Really great.
Randy Giles? Why did you just name me Horny Giles? Or how about some sex Giles?
Desperate for a shag Giles. God, how I must hate you. Anya keeps generating bunnies, and when the bunnies appear, they make this boop noise. Yeah. I'm not going down into that fluffy-tailed pit of death. It's one of the most quotable episodes. We should mention a minor character that I love is introduced in this season, and that's Clem. Clem is one of Spike's poker friends. He's a completely harmless demon with this baggy skin, harmless and funny.
He's the Sharpay of demons.
He is adorable in his character and personality. Or the invisibility episode.
Yeah, no one cares about the invisibility.
You don't like the one where Buffy becomes invisible?
I mean, I like it. It's a cute episode. All work and no play makes Doris a doll girl.
Right, the caseworker. She makes her coffee cup float and say, "Kill them all, Doris."
We're assuming this lady's name is Doris, by the way.
I think it is Doris, yeah. But there's one episode I hate more than anything else to do with the season. An episode's called Normal Again, and in it, Buffy is stung by a demon with a mind-altering
venom. Oh god, I
hate
this episode. It's my least favorite episode of all time. I fucking despise this piece of shit episode.
Oh yeah, what is the gimmick for Normal Again?
That makes her think that she's in an insane asylum.
It presents the possibility that she's in an insane asylum, her mom's still alive, her parents are still married. The entire series has been a psychotic break for her. And then later she tries to murder her friends. It's a dumb premise, but I would have been able to accept it if it didn't end the way it does. The venom works its way out of Buffy's system. We then cut back to her in the padded room in a straitjacket. Why are you toying with our emotions, Josh? Are you telling us that the show really could just be the delusions of a sick girl in a crazy house? WTF, mate. Why would you say that these characters that we love, that we've grown attached to over 6 years might not even exist? So anyway, you like parts of season 6. I dislike most of it, save for a handful of episodes.
You thought going back to your school was hell.
At a spanking new Hellmouth High.
All over town, they're seeing dead people. He's addicted to blood, and there's only one thing for a Slayer to do.
You've got to kill me.
I'm afraid we have a slight apocalypse.
The battle lines are drawn for the ultimate confrontation.
They want an apocalypse, or we'll give them one.
Meet the Slayers in training before they're all gone.
Is there a creature even Buffy can't slay?
Slayer School is in session. Countdown has begun to Buffy's final hour. If you want to throw a really killer apocalypse, you gotta have faith. The end has never been closer. Nothing could prepare Buffy for what's next. Be there as the Slayer takes her last stand. Will this be Buffy's final hour or her finest hour?
I'm finishing this once and for all.
You and I disagree. I'm not saying season 7 is the pinnacle of the series. It's definitely a flawed season. It's overall better than season 6.
There's a reason I dislike season 7 more than season 6. Nothing but 22 episodes of women's right metaphor. I'm not saying that women's rights is stupid.
Sexist.
They were trying to jam the metaphor down our throats. For 22 episodes, that was stupid. There is a physical embodiment of misogyny.
Yes, they introduce a character later in the season whose sexism is so exaggerated that becomes heavy-handed. The Hellmouth is on the verge of reopening. The first evil is this...
That's another thing that's so stupid. He's the first evil, but he's non-corporeal.
It can take the form of anybody who has died.
It's non-corporeal, but yet it can infuse its power into Nathan, whatever his name is.
Nathan Fillion, yeah.
It's the most inconsistent season of the whole series.
Later in the season, the first is trying to bum Buffy out, and Buffy calls the first the Taunter. The first literally cannot interact with people, feels like a weak villain. It's so weak that later on they do introduce a physical threat. Character of Caleb, that's the super sexist. He dresses like a priest. The apocalypse, for realsy this time, on the verge of happening. Buffy and her friends raise an army. Apparently there is such a thing as potential Slayers, girls who could conceivably become Slayers. And a bunch of these are assembled. Buffy starts training them. The forces of good and the forces of evil are on the verge of war. What do you think of the concept of the potential Slayers?
That doesn't bother me. It would make sense in this universe that there would be a lineup of potential Slayers that are training.
When a Slayer turns, the Watcher Council knows where to go. They know to send a Watcher to help somebody out. They must have a list of potential girls, but where does that list come from? How do they know? That's the part that confuses me. I guess magic, I don't know. Suddenly it doubles the size of the cast. Unfortunately, a lot of those girls, there's no time to develop them. Among them are some notable actresses. Felicity Day is V. Lelaine, Lizzie McGuire's best friend, is one of the potentials. One of the potentials becomes a prominent character. Kennedy becomes Willow's new girlfriend, and Kennedy
is awful.
Everybody hates Kennedy. Willow was so in love with Tara that she went insane when she died. A few few months later, she's letting this new girl go down on her. And it's not just that Kennedy's a new love interest that bothers me. Kennedy is so blatantly written. From the moment she appears, and I want to do it with you, Willow, is basically what she says. Handled so broadly. The actress is bad, too. I don't know that actress's name, but she's annoying. I can't stand that character. We are certainly not alone in that. Everybody hates Kennedy. Character. How about Principal Wood?
I like Principal Wood.
Because we should mention that Sunnydale High is reopened, which is a cool idea. The first episode of the season, Lessons it's called, begins with Buffy training Dawn. At the end of season 6, Buffy realized that Dawn isn't a helpless puppy dog. Maybe she should get some combat training. Go the fuck figure. Dawn meets a group of friends, and they have a wacky adventure in the high school with their ghost. Oh, well, this is Buffy the Next Generation. And unfortunately, that plotline is almost immediately dropped. Principal Wood is the principal of the new Sunnydale High, and he has a secret. First off, he's the son of a Slayer. He's the son of a Slayer we've previously met. Nikki, blaxploitation Pam Grier Slayer that Spike killed back in the 70s. Principal Wood has a personal grudge against Spike, and he does attempt to kill him, but it doesn't work out. Spike goes through some big developments.
He gets a soul.
At the very end of season 6, he goes away from Sunnydale. He goes to, it looks like some African village. I don't know how he got there on his motorcycle. He finds this demon in a cave who puts him through this test to give him what he wants. Now, what Spike thinks he wants is to get this chip out of his head, but what the demon does, it gives him back his soul. First, it drives him insane. Proves my point of what I've been saying all throughout season 6. Spike's trying to change. Spike's actually become a good guy now.
Honestly, as far as vampires with a soul go, I actually prefer Spike over Angel.
Spike doesn't lose his edge when he gets his soul.
Spike had to earn his soul.
Yeah, some people have made that point.
And Angel, his is a curse, and Spike wanted his.
Subconsciously, he wanted it, yeah.
Well, yeah. Nonetheless, he wanted it, and he earned it.
And there's this plot line where the first is triggered Spike to go on these killing sprees, because we find out when Spike was a human, he had kind of a weird relationship with his mom. When he became a vampire, he immediately turned his mom into a vampire, and then she started hitting on him, and then he staked her, which is gonna fuck up anybody. That background's fine, but I'm not a super huge fan of this whole idea that Spike is a sleeper agent for the first. Andrew becomes a Scooby, sort of. In the early half of the season, the first, as Warren, convinces Andrew to murder Jonathan over the Hellmouth in the high school. I wish it had been the other way around. Not a super huge fan of Andrew, and I like Jonathan. Truth is, Jonathan would never have murdered somebody. Andrew becomes a reluctant member of the Scoobies, and there are a couple episodes devoted to him. Anya becomes a vengeance demon again, and that motivates the plot of a few episodes.
Yeah.
One episode, she turns a girl's boyfriend into a worm. Another episode, she has a spider demon come in and kill a bunch of frat boys. That's not a bad episode, and I like that there's a flashback to the musical. We learn the origin of the Slayer.
Yeah.
Buffy goes on another vision quest. Principal Wood gives her this magic bag that his mom had that reveals to her the origin of the Slayer.
3 men who were afraid of demons took demon essence and they impregnated the first Slayer.
If you want to talk about the feminist subtext, a trio of shaman, they call them the Shadow Men, chose a girl, an innocent girl, and put a demon in her. This show wanted to make a serious point about the patriarchy. That's the most interesting one.
The man's always keeping the woman down.
Well, that's true, though. An origin for the Slayer, that makes sense. The reason they have the super strength is because a little bit of demon
That
in
origin
them.
makes sense.
I'm not a huge fan of how mean Buffy becomes. She becomes a general. She's training the potentials, and it leads to this really stupid moment. Faith comes back for a couple episodes. The potentials decide that they like Faith better than Buffy. Oh no, that Buffy is going to come back, that she's going to lead them again. But we have to have this ridiculous couple episodes where everybody's bickering, and they vote out Buffy, and Faith is the leader, which doesn't work out. I hate it when characters start bickering about shit on TV shows.
I do like the Faith redemption arc, though. I always had a little bit of a soft spot, or a hard spot, if you will, for Faith.
The thing with Faith is, when she was evil, she was so evil. Ever forgiving her becomes a high bridge to cross for me. I think I mixed my metaphors there. They introduced the Scythe.
The Slayer's super weapon.
Apparently, there's a comic book called Frey, the Slayer of the 31st Century. The Scythe was in that prior to this episode. For hardcore Buffy nerds, when they saw the Scythe in that one episode, it's oh. But for people who've never read that comic book, it's eh. And that leads up to this really ridiculous moment where there's this old woman living in a pyramid in the graveyard who's apparently been here for 6 seasons just hanging out and dropped some exposition about the Scythe on Buffy. And Giles is back, by the way. Giles does return. It's nice to see him again.
The first and Giles being in the same season does lead to an interesting episode.
They try to lead up to this element that Giles may be dead and may have been the first the whole time, and apparently they went to the effort to have Giles not touch anything, but it's just a mislead.
What's funny is that all the Scoobies go and tackle him to the ground. Touch him!
That is a great moment. I would have thought if Giles had come through the door, Buffy would have immediately given him a big hug. And I guess we should mention what Willow's been up to this season, aside from having sex with a really unfortunate girlfriend.
Going through detox.
Basically, the season begins, she's in the UK with Giles, and who's slowly getting her back on magic, and they make this distinction between black magic and white magic, which is racist.
It's leading to the point that maybe Willow was studying the wrong kind of magic.
Maybe, but it's also backtracking because the writers realized the magic addiction storyline was stupid. Throughout the season, Willow's much more careful with magic. Willow trying to kill her friends, huge betrayal of that character. How is anybody going to be able to forgive her? They devote a whole episode to that. Same time, same place it's called. When Willow goes back to Sunnydale, her guilt is so great that she inadvertently casts a spell on herself where no one can see her. And that episode has a fucking creepy demon in it who skins people.
That episode scared the shit out of me the first time I saw it.
This demon, the Gnarl, he paralyzes you and then skins you, but not all at once. He slowly strips the skin away and eats it.
It horrifies you.
That is some grody shit, man.
Way to go, Joss Whedon, for having the balls to do that. One of the episodes that I like and hate at the same time.
Which one's that?
Conversations with Dead People.
That's a strong one. I mentioned before how the series does these gimmick episodes. Hey, here's a silent film. Hey, here's a musical. Hey, here's an art movie. Conversations with Dead People is, hey, here's an anthology film. It's like Buffy's Pulp Fiction almost.
I like that aspect.
Buffy's in a graveyard talking to a vampire who she knew in high school. They're fighting, but they're also hanging out and chatting. Meanwhile, Dawn's story is a horror movie. She's alone at home, and her mother's ghost is being tortured by the First. Probably one of Dawn's better moments.
What I don't like about that is, where did Dawn get the mojo to cast that spell? She's never practiced any magic before.
You just kind of have to go with it. The assumption is that at some point she studied magic. What was the name of the suicide girl?
Cassie.
Willow has this conversation with this character. Appeared in the previous episode. We find out that it's the First. Make her think she's talking with Tara, but she's not.
One of the biggest problems I have, why did they just bring Amber Benson back?
Maybe it was a scheduling thing.
Willow never even talked to Cassie.
I agree with you, it should have been Amber Benson. There aren't that many funny episodes in the season.
That's another thing I hate most about this season.
No, I agree with you.
But one funny episode that I really like is Buffy's first day on the job as guidance counselor. That's just spinning around in her chair while trying to balance pencils on her nose.
Yeah, she gets a job as a guidance counselor at Sunnydale High, which we find out later. Principal Wood knew that she was a Slayer and he just wanted the Slayer nearby. He knows the school's on top of the Hellmouth. Naturally, some crazy shit does start to happen. There's a moment in that episode, a girl starts to become invisible, as in the very first season, and Buffy goes up to her and says, people notice you, people care about you, don't become invisible, please. People slowly start to flee Sunnydale. People realize the town is on the edge of the apocalypse and they need to get the hell out of there. Let's go ahead and talk about the final episode. It's called Chosen. Angel shows up. I'm happy they brought him back. He comes back and he hands Buffy a Deus Ex Machina that's going to become important later. But
don't they even call it Deus Ex Machina?
No. It's a magical amulet that's going to make the Hellmouth go kablooey. But I do like that interaction between Angel and Buffy, where Angel and Buffy finally get some closure, where he says, I'm not going to wait around for you forever. They both are at peace with the fact that this relationship will never work out. Briefly mentioned Caleb, Nathan Fillion. What do you think of Nathan Fillion in general?
I have nothing against Nathan Fillion.
Great in Slither. One of the potentials I do like is Amanda, who's this really mousy, nerdy, cute girl.
She dies.
I know. Why couldn't they have killed Kennedy instead? Buffy decides we're tired of waiting around for the First to kick our ass. We're going to war.
Yeah.
And she leads the potentials into the Hellmouth, which is full of Neanderthal vampires that are harder to kill than regular vampires.
Willow uses the scythe to cast a spell to turn all potentials into Slayers.
They all get the powers. Instead of there being one Slayer, there's 100. And they use that to turn the tide in the conflict. I feel like that's well done.
Then we get a new Willow form in this.
Yeah, we see the inverse of Dark Willow, White Willow.
Yeah.
Racist.
I like White Willow.
It's just one scene. I like the epic battle. Some of the CGI is not too swell, but, it's still, they said, this is the last episode of Buffy, let's do the biggest thing we can do.
Spike Hadokens the Hellmouth.
He wears the magical amulet that Angel brings. When light hits the amulet, a giant ray of power shoots out of his chest, causes an explosion, which causes Sunnydale to collapse. It becomes a huge crater. Pretty satisfying.
Yeah.
How do you top blowing up the high school in Season 3? You blow up the whole goddamn town. The very last scene of the very last episode.
I like it.
Where they zoom in on Buffy's face and they say, what can we do now?
And she smiles. But I like that last 3 minutes, where they're all Scoobying it out at the edge of...
Before they go down into the Hellmouth, Buffy, Willow, and Xander start bantering about how after they save the world, they want to go to the mall.
Yeah.
And they walk off chattering, and Giles turns around and says, the world is doomed, which is a reprise of dialogue from the very first episode. Glad they got that moment. There are a lot of good moments in the season finale. We should mention not everybody makes it out.
Yeah, Anya dies.
Anya goes out fighting. Apparently Xander was originally the one that was going to die, and the writer said to Josh, if you kill Xander, people are going to riot. Instead, they gouged one of his eyeballs out.
Which people still rioted about.
Season 7 has its flaws. It's overall, it makes up for a lot of the problems I had in the previous season. It ends the show on a decent note. Now, you clearly feel differently. But either way, the show's done now, right?
Right.
There's nothing more to talk about, except...
Your brother Numfar did the Dance of Joy for 3 moons. Numfar! Do the Dance of Joy.
The god-awful comic.
For years, there were comics. Dark Horse published a lot of different Buffy and Angel comics. A couple of years after the series ended, they officially said, we're going to make a comic book that's Buffy Season 8. Continuation of the show. This is with Josh Whedon's approval. This is canon. I read the comic for a while, and I really did not like it. The main plot of Season 8 is Buffy was the leader of a covert organization. A bunch of the new Slayers are going around the world fighting evil wherever it may be. There was something like a military force, some sort of evil thing, and it's led by this entity called Twilight. I felt like it had a lot of the same problems I had with season 7 and 6, where everybody's miserable. Xander got a girlfriend and then they immediately killed her off. Dawn lost her virginity to a warlock. I dropped the comic before the reveal that Twilight is Angel, but apparently he's possessed by this entity called Twilight, and the series ended with Buffy destroying all magic in the world.
But somehow Willow is still able to use magic later on.
And the comic, I think it's still running. I think they're up to season 10 now, but I stopped paying attention a while ago. But we should mention only successful TV spinoff, Angel. After season 3, Angel left Buffy. He got his own show. Angel ran from 96 to 2004. We're not going to go into great detail about it, but Angel wasn't a bad show. I never liked it as much as Buffy. Angel's lows were lower than Buffy's lows. The show didn't get really, really good until the last season. Angel's in LA. He's got a detective agency. Cordelia and Wesley are there with him. Eventually, Angel and Cordelia develop a relationship, and they're fighting an evil law firm, Wolfram and Hart. Actually, this ancient demonic order that's existed for thousands of years. In the last season, Angel actually ends up becoming the owner of Wolfram and Hart. Spike joins the show as a ghost. Angel actually ended on a cliffhanger, which was kind of a bummer. Characters on Angel I like. There's this character they introduced called Fred, the super nerdy girl. I love her. Lorne is this benevolent demon who can read people's futures when they sing to him, so he owns a karaoke bar. Eventually, Angel has a son. There's some magic juju involved. Darla comes back to life. He gets Darla pregnant. Connor goes into a hell dimension, ages 20 years, comes back, he's a prick. The show had its ups and downs, but I generally thought Angel was a pretty good series. You were never really into Angel.
No, I mean, maybe one day I'll sit down and watch it all.
You should give it a shot. It slowed down a lot, but for a while there was a steady stream of Buffy merchandise. For a while there, I even had a subscription to the official Buffy magazine. That's how big of a fucking nerd I was. Over the years, there have been a bunch of attempts to launch new spin-offs for Buffy. The one that most anticipated, that came close to happening a couple of times, would have been about Giles, and it would have been called Ripper. It would have been set in UK, and it would have had Giles investigating ghosts. From my understanding, the reason Ripper never happened is Josh was really adamant that this would be a co-production with the BBC. This was before the big revival of Doctor Who. At the time, the BBC was not giving money to genre sci-fi fantasy horror shows. But I feel like they could still do this.
Yeah.
If Anthony Stewart Head's available, it sounded cool. One I am so bummed out never came to fruition that I really would have loved to have seen was Buffy the Animated Series.
Which there's actually a pilot of it.
Yes, there is a 3-minute pilot on YouTube. Seek it out. Everybody would have come back to voice their characters except for Sarah Michelle Gellar. Got the sound-alike from the video games, who sounds just like her. The setting for Buffy the Animated Series would have been season 1.5, in between seasons 1 and 2. But it would have been post-season 5 timeline, so Dawn would be on the show as like a 6-year-old. Obviously, because it would have been targeted towards kids, it wouldn't have had the heavy melodrama of the later seasons. It would have been fun Buffy all the time, which sounded awesome. And if you watch the pilot, it's really, really good. The animation is good. The character designs are great. The show didn't get picked up. Even though Buffy was never on Fox, it's a Fox property. It was produced by Fox. It's owned by Fox. And at the time Buffy the Animated Series was in development, Fox had just canned their Saturday morning cartoon department. And Warner Brothers wouldn't show it because they said, this show is in a time slot for 7-year-old boys, but it's about a girl, so 7-year-old boys will never watch it. Wrong place, wrong time, unfortunately. Some ideas that were kicked around but never seriously considered was a Faye solo series, which the show always seemed like it was building toward.
Yeah.
This idea that she's out there having adventures, and I don't know why they never followed up on that. And apparently at some point somebody kicked around an idea called Slayer School, which would have been all about the potentials. I don't know about that. After Angel ended, they considered doing a series of TV movies about Spike. James Marster said, if we don't get this up and running in a few years, I'll be too old for it. And unfortunately, they did not get it going in that time period, so it didn't happen. A couple years ago, during the Twilight fever, the original owners to Buffy, Josh doesn't actually own the show, the original producers of the movie do, they said, we want to reboot Buffy as a movie. And there was a lot of uproar, and a lot of people said, Buffy without Josh is going to be a fucking abomination. It may not happen next year, but I think a Buffy reboot movie will inevitably happen. When that happens, what would you like to see from a potential big-budget Buffy movie?
If they're going to reboot it, then they'll automatically have Willow be practicing magic. And Xander will already have an iPad, because this is the dark and gritty Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
I imagine if they made a Buffy movie, it would probably be similar to the latest Star Trek movies. It's going to happen, though, because this is a property people still know. It's a license people still love. Eventually, they're going to want to cash in on that.
Look at Power Rangers, you know.
If a Buffy reboot movie was rolling in production now, who would you cast as Buffy?
As Buffy? I don't know.
An executive right now was doing this. I know who it would be. It would be Chloe Grace Moretz.
Well, that's who it should be.
She can do action, she can do horror, she can do comedy, she's got great legs.
And she can handle the dialogue. Okay, so who would play Willow?
Oh, I don't know. Abigail Breslin. I have no fucking clue.
Abigail Breslin.
All those shops gone. The Gap, Starbucks, Toys R Us. Who will remember all those landmarks unless we tell the world of them?
Yeah.
The first is Scrunch, so what do you think we should do, Buffy?
Yeah, you're not the one and only chosen anymore. Just gotta live like a person. How's that feel?
Yeah, Buffy. What are we gonna do now?
That's our thoughts on the Buffy franchise. Any closing thoughts on this series?
Season 7 sucks, and it's the worst season ever.
It was a pretty good show. I rewatched the entire run of the series, all 7 seasons, in the span of about 2 months, but by the end of it, I still said, I'm gonna miss these characters.
Yeah. It's very rare, especially today, does a show come along that gets you completely invested in the characters like this one did.
That's our closing statements on Buffy.
Can you imagine that there are people out there in the world that doesn't know that Allison Hannigan played Willow? They only know her as Lily from How I Met Your Mother.
I know, it's been long enough now that there's a whole generation that don't even know her as Willow. Isn't that terrifying?
That is terrifying. Because we're that old.
Terrifying as vampires?
Not quite as bitey. I keep telling you, you ought to just record this.
That's cheating. Email us at bangersandmash88@yahoo.com. What's the pithy one-liner we should use to wrap this up?
Keep slaying. A very...
Oh wait, no, I know how we should end it. Grr. Arg.
That's better.
Mr. Xander Harris, that's what he is to the world outside. That's the name he carries with pride. I'm just lately Anya, not very much is the world I know. All these years with nothing to show. I've boned a troll, I've wreaked some wrath, but on the whole I've had no path. I like to bowl, I'm good with math, but who am I? Now I reply that I'm the missus. I will be his Mrs. Mrs. Anya Christina Emanuela Jenkins Harris. What's the point of loving? I mean, except for the sweaty part. What's the point of losing your heart? Maybe if you're lucky, being a pair makes you twice as tall. Maybe you're not losing at all. No need to cover up my heart, plus see above every sweaty part. So maybe love is pretty smart, then so am I. I found my guy, and I'll be Mrs. I will be his Mrs. Mrs. Anya, lame ass made up maiden name Harris. We'll never part, not if we can. And if we start, then here's my plan. I'll show him what bliss is, welcome him with kisses, 'cause this is a missus who misses her man. He's my Xander and he's awfully swell. It makes financial sense as well. Although he can be, I'll never tell. Just stand aside. Here comes the bride.